Welcome to the Pro Ticker Deep Dive.
It's really great to be here.
And honestly, great might be kind of a complicated word to use today.
Yeah.
We are recording this on the morning of Monday, March 2026. And, if you're listening to this, you probably spent your weekend exactly the same way we did.
Glued to the feeds.
Exactly. Just refreshing the feeds, watching the entire world change in real time.
It has been a weekend of just absolute shocks.
Yeah.
And shock isn't even a strong enough word at this point.
No.
We are looking at a fundamental alteration of the geopolitical and financial landscape in the span of, 48 hours?
Barely 48 hours. It feels like one of those real where were you when moments,
Right.
Like the world on Friday afternoon when the markets closed is simply not the same world we all woke up to this morning.
It really isn't. The whole chessboard has just been completely flipped over.
So we have a massive task ahead of us today on this deep dive. The temptation is going to be to talk about just the war.
Of course.
We have to talk about the war. The footage coming out of the Persian Gulf is unbelievable, but...
But if we only talk about the missiles flying in the Middle East, we are missing half the story.
Exactly.
We'd be missing the story behind the story, really. Because while the kinetic war was starting, an economic war, or I guess a better term would be a strategic consolidation,
Right.
that was happening simultaneously.
Because while the entire world was watching the Persian Gulf, something massive was happening quietly in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
And our mission today is to connect these two dots for you. On one hand, we have Operation Epic Fury, this massive U.S.-Israel military strike that has effectively decapitated the Iranian leadership.
A kinetic escalation of the absolute highest order.
And on the other hand, simultaneously over the weekend, we have NVIDIA executing an unprecedented $6 billion strategic pivot.
To basically buy the physical infrastructure of the AI economy.
Right, computational supremacy. So, the question we are answering today is, how are a missile shortage in the Persian Gulf and a giant fiber optics deal in California actually two sides of the same exact coin?
We're calling it the rise of Pax Silica.
Pax Silica, I love that term.
It's a fascinating convergence. You have kinetic warfare directly meeting digital infrastructure. And if you're an investor, or honestly just someone trying to understand the world in 2026, you can't look at defense stocks without looking at AI.
And you can't look at AI without understanding the security implications.
Precisely.
Okay, let's start with the immediate crisis. The Monday morning crisis, as the pre-market feeds are already calling it, set the scene for us. How did we actually get here? Because, 2025 ended rough, but this is a whole new level.
It is. And to understand the gravity of this weekend, you really have to rewind just a few months. We need to look at the internal pressure cooker inside Iran.
Right, the protests.
Exactly. Late 2025, we saw massive domestic protests. And I'm not talking about small pockets of dissent in Tehran. This was widespread. It was everywhere.
The numbers coming out were just horrific.
They were tragic. The estimates, according to the Trump administration and various NGOs operating in the region, were something like 32,000 deaths in the crackdown.
32,000, which the White House explicitly labeled a massacre.
Correct. And that internal instability created a desperate situation for the regime. When a regime feels its grip slipping at home, it almost always looks abroad to project strength.
To rally the base, so to speak.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Create an external enemy to unify the internal factions. And that brings us to the diplomatic failure. In February 2026, just last month, the nuclear talks in Oman completely broke down.
I want to dig into that for a second. We've seen talks break down before.
Many times.
So why was this time different? Why was Oman the straw that broke the camel's back?
Because of the technical details regarding enrichment. The U.S. demanded a total, verifiable end to uranium enrichment. But the intelligence that was later declassified and highly referenced by President Trump showed that the Fordo facility had already begun enriching to 90%.
90%.
90%.
Which is weapons grade.
That is the red line. That is the exact point where you stop making fuel for power plants and you start making cores for warheads.
Yeah.
So Iran wouldn't, or realistically likely couldn't, given their internal hardliner politics, meet the U.S. terms to dismantle that capability.
And President Trump was pretty vocal about that failure on Truth Social over the last few weeks.
Very vocal. He made it completely clear that patience had run out. He used phrases like final warning and consequences like never before seen. And that brings us to the night of February 28, Operation Epic Fury.
The name alone signals the intent, Epic Fury. This wasn't a skirmish.
No. Compare this to the skirmishes we saw in June 2025, Those were signaling shots.
Yeah, taking out a radar dish here, a drone facility there.
Exactly. They were tit for tat. This weekend, this was a decapitation strike. We are talking about a level of force projection that the world really hasn't seen in decades.
Walk us through the hardware, because for you listening, when you just hear the word airstrike on the news, you might imagine a drone or two firing a Hellfire missile, but this was much, much bigger.
This was a symphonic application of air power. We're talking B-2 Spirits flying all the way from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri.
All the way from the States.
Yes, that is a global power projection mission. That means refueling midair multiple times, flying completely stealth all the way into arguably the most heavily defended, contested airspace in the Middle East.
And they weren't alone?
Not at all. Over 100 stealth fighters were involved in the package, including F-35s and F-22s clearing the skies and disabling the air defenses.
And the targets weren't just the Fordo centrifuges.
No. The targets were the leadership itself. We have confirmation now from multiple intelligence agencies. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is dead. IRGC Commander Mohammad Pakpour is dead.
Wow. I mean, that creates a power vacuum that is almost impossible to quantify right now.
It is a regime change event. Whether that was the explicit stated goal of the operation or just the immediate result, you have effectively removed the spiritual and military head of the state in a single night.
And the rhetoric coming out of the White House over the weekend is, well, it's intense. Annihilate the Iranian Navy. Destroy nuclear sites. It sounds like the goal is total neutralization of their offensive capabilities.
It is. And naturally, the retaliation was immediate. Iran didn't just take this lying down. The remnants of the IRGC command structure launched whatever they had left in their arsenals.
Which is still a lot of hardware.
Significant amounts. We are seeing coordinated attacks on U.S. bases in Bahrain, Qatar, Jordan. And the Houthi movement has resumed attacks in the Red Sea with a totally renewed intensity.
Which brings us to the fear trade. I was looking at the futures markets last night, right when Asia opened, and oil was just going vertical.
It's the Strait of Hormuz. We always talk about it in theory, but now it's real. That is the ultimate choke point.
20%.
Yes, 20% of the global oil transit moves through that narrow strip of water. When you have active threats to close the strait, or just the kinetic activity making it uninsurable.
Right. Tankers literally cannot get insurance to sail there right now.
Exactly. The underwriters pull out, the ships stop moving, and the market panics.
Brent crude spiked to $82 this morning, even touching $90 a barrel intraday. That is a 13% jump in a matter of hours.
And that ripples through everything. It's not just gasoline. It's transportation costs, manufacturing costs, inflation expectations. Everything gets repriced.
And where's the smart money going right now? It's fleeing tech, right?
Generally, yes. The initial reaction is always a flight to safety. Investors are fleeing consumer discretionary and broad tech to get into defense and energy. But, and this is the absolute key for today's deep dive, it's not just about safety anymore.
It's about inventory.
Yes, it's about who actually has the physical inventory to fight this war.
Let's dig into that, because inventory sounds like a boring supply chain term until you realize we are talking about the actual interceptor missiles that keep cities safe. We have a section in our notes here we're calling the shield and the shortage.
Right, and this is the terrifying math of modern warfare. The U.S. government has this overarching vision they've been working on, which they call the Golden Dome for America.
Which sounds very sci-fi, like a literal force field.
It does sound like that. It's a multi-layered shield concept. The idea is fusing air, sea, space, and ground sensors and shooters into one network. So no matter what comes at us, a ballistic missile, a cruise missile, a drone swarm, we have a sensor to see it early and an effector to kill it.
But the reality on the ground this Monday morning is that the dome has some serious cracks in it.
The reality is that we are simply running out of bullets. We call it the attrition problem. If you look at the last 2 years, the sustained defense of Ukraine, the prolonged defense of Israel, these conflicts have completely drained U.S. stockpiles.
And we aren't just talking about cheap bullets or artillery shells here.
No, we are talking about the absolute top-tier systems, the Patriot PAC-3 MSE and the Tadjet interceptors.
These are the high-end systems. But help us understand the economics of this. Why can't we just build more of them?
It comes down to a concept called the cost-exchange ratio. This is the brutal, unforgiving math of modern air defense. Think about it this way. Iran, or the Houthis, can build a Shahed-style suicide drone for maybe $20,000 to $50,000.
Okay, so cheap and dirty.
Very. It is basically a lawnmower engine with some fiberglass wings and a payload of explosives. You can build that in a garage.
Right.
But to shoot that down reliably, especially if it's heading toward a populated civilian area or a billion-dollar carrier group, where you have absolutely zero margin for error.
You can't just miss.
You cannot miss. So we are often forced to fire a Patriot PAS-3 MSE interceptor at it. Do you know the replacement cost of one of those PAS-3 missiles?
I'm guessing it's slightly more than $20,000.
Try $4 million.
$4 million. Ouch. So we are actively trading a Ferrari for a go-kart.
Every single time we pull the trigger. And it gets much worse. It's not just the money, it's the actual physics of production. Well, you can build a drone in a garage with commercial off-the-shelf parts. You could only build a PAC-3 interceptor in a highly specialized facility with clean rooms, extreme security clearances, and exotic solid rocket propellants that take months to cure.
So it's not like Ford switching an assembly line to make ventilators during the pandemic. You need highly specialized, bespoke infrastructure.
Exactly. Before this week, Lockheed Martin was pumping out maybe 500 or 600 of these specific interceptors a year.
A year, but in a saturation attack.
In a high-intensity conflict, exactly like what kicked off this weekend, a single carrier group might fire 40 or 50 interceptors in one massive engagement.
Wow.
If Iran launches a coordinated saturation attack with hundreds of drones and missiles, standard doctrine says you are firing 2 interceptors for every single incoming threat, just to guarantee the kill.
So the burn rate is astronomical.
You could burn through an entire year's worth of industrial output in weeks. Weeks. Honestly, maybe days if the swarm is big enough and sustained. That is the inventory crisis. It is not that Congress can't print the money to pay for them. It's that we physically cannot bake the cake fast enough.
So this explains the massive industrial shift we're seeing in the markets today. I was reading about the Lockheed Martin deal from January. It feels like the Department of War knew this exact scenario was coming.
They absolutely saw the trend lines. They looked at the burn rates in Ukraine and the Red Sea and did the math. On January 8, 2026, they signed a historic framework agreement, and the numbers involved are staggering. They are aiming to triple the annual production of the PAS-3 MSE.
Going from 600 units a year to roughly 2,000.
Yes. But again, tripling the production of a complex supersonic missile isn't like stepping up the production of iPhones in Shenzhen.
No, you can't just hire more line workers.
It requires brand new factories, entirely new supply chains, a fully cleared and certified workforce. You have to train aerospace engineers. That is why the deal is structured over 7 years. It is a massive long-term commitment.
And it signals a major shift in the Department of War's acquisition strategy, right?
The total paradigm shift. They are finally giving the defense industry what it has been begging for: long-term demand certainty.
Right, because usually the Pentagon buys year to year, which makes it completely impossible for a company like Lockheed to justify building a billion-dollar factory.
Exactly. If the war ends tomorrow, the Pentagon might cancel the order next year, and the company's left holding the bag on a billion-dollar empty building. Now, the government is saying, build the factory, and we promise, by contract, we will buy every missile that comes out of it for the next decade. They are effectively underwriting the massive expansion of the U.S. industrial base.
And the stock market loves that.
The market absolutely loves certainty. That is exactly why you see defense primes surging today. Lockheed Martin, RTX Cord, Northrop Grumman, Kratos, they aren't just up 10% because there are explosions on the news. They are up because the market realizes defense is no longer just a safe haven for dividends. It is a primary growth engine. The proposed 2027 defense budget is $1.5 trillion.
$1.5 trillion. That is a number that is just hard to wrap your head around.
It is. But the market is realizing that in 2026, security has become the ultimate commodity. You literally cannot have a functioning global economy if you do not have a shield to protect the ships and the cities.
Okay, so that is the kinetic side of the board. Missiles, shields, oil, the physical world is on fire. But while the sky is lighting up over the Middle East, NVIDIA, the undisputed king of AI, decides to drop a $6 billion bomb of its own.
Not a missile, but a financial maneuver that will reshape the tech landscape.
Right. And this is where the plot thickens for us, because while everyone was watching CNN for war updates, NVIDIA executed an absolute masterclass in strategic vertical integration.
Walk us through this, because usually NVIDIA just sells chips, right? They design the H100, the Blackwell, the new Rubin architecture, and they sell them to Microsoft or Amazon or Google.
Right. They are a fabulous chip designer.
But this move over the weekend is entirely different.
This is them saying, we aren't just going to sell you the engine anymore. We are going to own the racetrack. NVIDIA is moving aggressively to own the physical and optical layers of the AI economy.
Let's break down the 3 big investments they made public on March 2. The first one is a massive play. CoreWeave.
Right? CoreWeave.
Oh.
A $2 billion investment. NVIDIA is buying equity directly at $87.20 a share.
And for those listening who don't follow cloud infrastructure closely, CoreWeave is a cloud provider, but they are not like AWS or Azure.
Exactly. They are what's being called a neocloud. AWS and Azure are generalists. They host basic websites, corporate databases, email servers, everything. CoreWeave specializes purely in GPU acceleration.
They are built from the ground up, for one thing, running massive AI models.
And NVIDIA is backing them with this $2 billion to build out 5 gigawatts of AI factories by 2030.
5 gigawatts. That's small nation-state levels of power consumption.
It is genuinely massive. To put that in perspective for you, a typical, very large, traditional data center might draw 50 to maybe 100 megawatts of power.
Right.
We are talking about 50 to 100 times that scale. 5 gigawatts is roughly the output of 5 average nuclear reactors, just for these AI factories.
And here is the real kicker of the deal. NVIDIA isn't just handing them $2 billion in cash to build buildings. They are giving CoreWeave a capacity guarantee.
Meaning what exactly?
Meaning NVIDIA is promising, contractually, to buy any unsold compute time that CoreWeave has. They are effectively backstopping CoreWeave's entire revenue stream.
That sounds incredibly risky, or maybe brilliant. It feels like they're artificially manufacturing their own demand.
It is very aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
But what it does is ensure that CoreWeave can build out these massive data centers faster than anyone else on the planet, because they don't have to worry about finding customers immediately to pay off the debt. NVIDIA is basically saying, build it as fast as humanly possible, and if the customers don't show up on day one, we will pay for the power and the compute.
Wow. Okay, so that handles the compute and the real estate.
Yeah.
But then there's the plumbing. The other $4 billion went to 2 other companies, Coherent and Lumentum.
And this is the part of the deal that I think the general public completely misses. $2 billion to Coherent, $2 billion to Lumentum. These are companies that make advanced optics and lasers.
Right. And the obvious question is, why does an AI chip company care about lasers? I mean, lasers are cool, but what do they have to do with training a trillion-parameter large language model?
Because Jensen Huang is hitting what engineers call the copper wall.
The copper wall. Explain that.
It is a fundamental physics problem. We have reached a point where the physical GPU chips themselves are so incredibly fast that the standard copper wires connecting them on the server boards simply cannot keep up.
The data is bottlenecked.
Yes. When you try to push massive amounts of data, we're talking terabits per second, through traditional copper traces on a circuit board, you generate friction. You generate heat.
Lots of heat.
You get signal resistance. The data signal literally degrades over just a few inches. If you push it any harder, you literally cook the system. You'd melt the copper.
So the wire is the bottleneck. The multi-thousand-dollar chip is literally sitting there waiting for the cheap copper wire to deliver the data.
Exactly. And the only way to go faster, and more importantly, cooler, is to switch from using electrons, which is electricity running over copper, to using photons, light.
Silicon photonics.
Silicon photonics.
Yeah.
Using microscopic lasers to shoot data directly between the chips over fiber optic glass. It is exponentially faster, it generates almost zero heat in transit, and it can carry way more bandwidth over much longer distances within the data center.
So by investing $4 billion, NVIDIA is essentially buying up the companies that manufacture the optical highways inside these future gigawatt data centers.
Precisely. They are securing the domestic supply chain for the physical infrastructure that actually allows their next-generation chips to work at scale. If you view the AI boom as a train network, NVIDIA has always made the fastest locomotive. But with these weekend deals, they are buying the companies that lay the physical tracks. That's CoreWeave. And the companies that make the complex signals and the high-speed switches. That's Coherent and Lumentum.
There is some real controversy here, though, in the financial press today. We have to touch on the circular financing criticism.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The market bears are screaming about this on CNBC right now.
Yeah?
They are asking, is NVIDIA just funding its own customers to buy its own chips, just to prop up its own quarterly revenue?
It does sound a bit like a washing machine. Think about it. NVIDIA gives $2 billion to CoreWeave. CoreWeave then turns around and uses that exact money to buy $2 billion worth of NVIDIA Blackwell GPUs. NVIDIA books that as revenue. It pads the earnings report beautifully.
It is a very valid critique.
Yeah.
It absolutely inflates the top-line numbers in the short term. It feels a bit reminiscent of the dot-com bubble, where telecom companies did a lot of vendor financing to artificially boost sales.
Right, the 1999 playbook.
Exactly. But the counter-argument, and this is really the core of the Pax Silica argument we're making today, is that this isn't just financial engineering. This is necessary, critical vertical integration.
How so? Why is it necessary?
Think of the 19th century railroad barons. Vanderbilt, Stanford. They didn't just build the trains. They built the steel mills to make the rails. They bought the vast tracts of land. They literally laid the track across the country.
Because if they didn't do it themselves, no one else would.
Exactly. If they waited for someone else to lay the track, there would be no market for their trains.
So NVIDIA is building the entire ecosystem because no one else can move fast enough to accommodate their chips.
That's the thesis. The traditional cloud providers, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, they are moving fast, yes, but they have massive legacy baggage.
Yeah.
They have internal competing priorities, shareholders demanding dividends, other business units.
Right.
CoreWeave has one priority: deploying NVIDIA GPUs as fast as physics allows. By funding them directly, NVIDIA ensures there is a pure-play, high-speed outlet for their technology that isn't bottlenecked by corporate bureaucracy.
It's a fascinating and massive gamble, but let's bring it back to the convergence, because we titled this deep dive, Kinetic Escalation and Computational Supremacy.
Right.
We have the physical war in Section 1 and the tech pivot in Section 3. How do these two massive macro events meet today?
They meet in the concept of Pax Silica. This is the term emerging in policy circles for this new U.S.-led coalition. And it's not just the traditional NATO alliance anymore.
Who else is in it?
It actively includes the UAE, Qatar, India. And the fundamental glue holding this new coalition together isn't just mutual defense treaties or shared democratic values, is the semiconductor and AI supply chain.
Securing the silicon.
Securing the silicon, securing the rare earths to build it, and securing the massive amounts of energy required to run it. And because of this, we are seeing the defense sector and the AI sector merge into a single, unified national security apparatus. Look at the real-world case study of Astris AI.
Right, Astris AI. This is a Lockheed Martin subsidiary, right? Launched very quietly late last year.
Yes, December 2025. Astris AI is essentially an AI factory built specifically for the government. But here's the truly interesting part: the tech stack running underneath it.
Let me guess, it's NVIDIA.
It is pure NVIDIA.
So Lockheed Martin provides the defense contracting expertise and the heavy security clearances, and NVIDIA provides the actual brains.
That is exactly the partnership. Astris integrates NVIDIA's NIM microservices.
What are those for the non-engineers?
They are basically prepackaged, highly optimized AI models that can run independently in fully secure, air-gapped environments.
Air-gapped, meaning physically disconnected from the public internet. Because obviously you can't run the nuclear launch codes or classified troop movements through a public OpenAI server.
No, definitely not. You need to bring the AI directly to the data inside the secure classified vault. You cannot send the classified data out to the cloud. Astris AI solves that massive headache. They allow the U.S. government to use cutting-edge, commercial-grade AI inside the classified fence line.
And we actually have a real-world, unclassified example of this with a company called Expo.
Right. Expo is an innovative, solid rocket motor company, which, by the way, is highly relevant given the severe missile shortage we discussed earlier.
Everything connects.
It does. They are using Astris AI to generate highly secure, deeply technical engineering proposals for the Department of Defense. It sounds like a boring bureaucratic use case, but in defense, speed matters more than almost anything.
How much of a difference does it actually make?
It's huge.
Yeah.
If you can use a secure AI to write a 500-page, highly technical classified contract proposal in an hour instead of a month,
you get the contract faster.
You get the contracts faster, the funds clear faster, and you start building the actual missiles faster. It dramatically accelerates the OODA loop observe, orient, decide, act.
It finally brings Silicon Valley commercial speed to the notoriously slow-moving red tape world of defense acquisition.
Exactly.
But it's not just paperwork and proposals. We are also talking about AI literally in the cockpit. Let's talk about Project Have-Remy and the X-62A Vista.
This is where it gets into the stuff of movies. The X-62A Vista is a heavily modified F-16 fighter jet. It is a real jet, burning real jet fuel, flying real kinetic maneuvers in the sky, but it is flown entirely by an AI agent.
And it's not just flying a straight and level like a commercial autopilot.
No, we are talking aggressive tactical maneuvering within visual range dogfighting, real-time missile evasion. The Skunk Works team at Lockheed proved in these tests that an AI can handle complex 3D maneuvering and reaction times significantly faster than a human pilot ever could.
Because the AI doesn't black out from G-forces.
Exactly. The human body has physiological limits. An AI can pull 9, 10, 12 Gs and keep processing targeting data perfectly. And this highlights the massive difference in grand strategy between the U.S. and, say, Russia or Iran.
It's the defining contrast of the decade.
It really is. The adversary Russia with its Su-57, or Iran with its aging inherited fleet, they rely entirely on manual control and individual pilot skill. And they have very limited numbers of high-end functional jets.
Whereas the U.S. approach is mass.
It's AI teaming and mass.
Sure.
The operational concept going forward is that you have one highly trained human pilot sitting in an F-35, acting more like a battlefield quarterback than a traditional dogfighter.
Right.
And flying alongside that human are 3 or 4 autonomous wingman drones, maybe based on that Kratos technology, controlled entirely by AI.
So the human makes the high-level strategic decision, engage that specific target array, and the AI executes the micro-tactical kill chain to make it happen.
Precisely. And if you lose a drone to an enemy missile, it's just hardware. You don't lose a pilot. You don't have to write a letter to a family. That changes the entire calculus of war. It makes the U.S. military force multiply effectively instantly.
This brings us to what analysts are calling the investment trinity for 2026. If you're looking at where the institutional capital is violently flowing today, it seems to be these 3 things: AI, quantum, and defense.
They are completely inseparable now. You cannot have a strong, modern defense without AI. You cannot have secure AI without quantum-resistant encryption to protect the data. And you can't build any of it without the physical industrial base.
The thesis has shifted.
Completely. The thesis is, don't just buy the company that makes the tank. Buy the AI company that writes the software that flies the wingman drone alongside the tank. Buy the optics company that moves the data for the AI. Buy the energy company that powers the data center.
It is a totally holistic view of national security.
It is. It's the stark realization that national security isn't just about the Pentagon's procurement budget anymore. It's about the NVIDIA budget, the Microsoft capital expenditure budget, the energy grid budget.
So bringing this all the way back to this Monday morning, March 2, 2026. We have a massive kinetic war erupting in the Middle East that is driving unprecedented demand for kinetic weapons missiles, interceptors, solid rocket fuel.
Right.
And simultaneously, we have an economic war for supremacy in Silicon Valley, driving massive demand for computational weapons GPUs, fiber optics, gigawatts of energy.
And they are feeding each other.
Exactly.
The kinetic escalation in Iran practically proves on a global stage that we need better, faster, smarter weapons.
Right.
Which directly drives the demand for AI integration, which directly drives the demand for NVIDIA's infrastructure. It is a completely self-reinforcing loop.
Which leads us to the so what for you listening right now. Why should you care about a complex fiber optics deal when there are literally headlines about aircraft carriers launching streaks?
Because the market is loudly telling you today that security is the ultimate commodity. Whether that is physical security provided by a Patriot PAC-3 missile, the Golden Dome, or digital sovereignty provided by a 5-gigawatt AI factory on U.S. soil, Pax Silica.
The premium on safety, both physical and digital, has simply never been higher.
Correct. The market has woke up this morning and realized that in a highly fractured, volatile world, the absolute most valuable assets are the ones that protect you and the ones that make you decide faster than the other guy.
I want to leave everyone listening with a final thought today. We have talked about speed a lot on this deep dive. The hypersonic speed of missiles, the speed of light and fiber optics, the microsecond speed of AI decision-making.
It is the defining characteristic of this new era, speed.
But here is the provocative thought I want you to mull over as you watch the news today. We are rapidly building autonomous systems that consume gigawatts of power just to control tactical weapon systems. We are putting AI in the cockpit of F-16s. As we infinitely accelerate this loop of warfare, are we removing the human element of hesitation?
That is the big existential question. Because human hesitation, that brief pause before you push the button, that moment of second guessing, has literally saved the world from nuclear war in the past.
Right. Think about Stanislav Petrov in 1983.
Exactly.
He sat in that Soviet bunker. He saw the early warning radar blip indicating incoming American missiles. Protocol said launch immediately, but his human gut said glitch. He hesitated, and he didn't launch the nukes.
He saved the world by being slow.
Yes.
But if the AI can react in milliseconds to a perceived threat, and the adversary's AI reacts in milliseconds to that initial reaction, Do we spiral into a massive conflict faster than human diplomats can even pick up the red phone?
The flash crash of warfare, like we see algorithms crash the stock market, but with kinetic weapons.
We are building a machine that runs faster than we can think. And as geopolitical tensions hit their absolute boiling point like we're seeing in Iran right now, that lack of hesitation might actually be the most dangerous variable of all.
A deeply sobering thought to end on. But that is the stark reality of March 2, 2026.
Indeed it is.
We will continue to monitor the situation in the Gulf and the extreme movements in the markets. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay safe and stay informed.
Goodbye.
See you next time.